2.0. All right.
Here we are.
You ready?
Uh,
Yeah. Born ready. Look at that. Look at that blue shirt.
I wasn't going to say that.
I know.
I wasn't going to say it. Way too overdone.
I know.
I'll get an eye roll from people like,
What?
like people that say that now, like, I was born ready. They're like, yeah, okay. Get on with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were. Came out slinging energy balls.
That's right.
All right, so in this section, we're going to talk about the Kinjas.
Yep.
And we're going to introduce them in terms of like how they work and, what the benefits are from practicing them and kind of what they are in general and how they, how we can use them to promote seeing.
Yeah.
Right. So, basically, what are they? I mean, basically, they're diagrams and they're hand positions and they're combined with breathing patterns and imaging focuses. Is kind of a complex routine. So we're going to break it up into a lot of pieces. So.
We're going to break it into pieces just to make it as simple as it is, right? I mean, it is simple, but when you start saying all the different things that it does make it sound like it's complex, although it's not really.
Yeah.
So the Kinjas specifically, that word is it's just a different word for mudra, basically.
Okay. And a
mudra is a hand configuration that stimulates a certain flow of energy in the body.
Right.
These specifically go to stimulating the chakras themselves.
Okay.
So each one is associated with a specific chakra.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's 9 of them in total that we're
9 of them in total that we're going to do.
Right.
Yep. There are others, obviously, but those are the important for us right now.
Okay. So before we get into like how to do them, basically maybe you could give us like a little bit of like how they actually, or what kind of benefits should we be expecting from, like, why are we doing it? Why do we put emphasis on them and all that?
Well, I mean, there are ways that we can. There are obviously through your life there are natural ways that we just interact in the world that cause the chakras either to slow down and sort of not really atrophy to an extent, but they're they sort of go dormant to some degree, right? So obviously the stronger they are and the more active they are, the more sensitive we are to the areas that they control, right? So, and they're energy centers in the body, right? The chakras are energy centers in the body that sort of accumulate energy. They're like operating systems between, your sphere of sensation or your aura. And so obviously they have things to do with your perceptual states as well. And so it takes the energy that you're perceiving from the exterior world and it comes in and accumulates in that chakra, and then it gets dissipated into, the channels from there and into the major channels and then into the smaller channels and finally to the physical material you see here. So it's not just that it's stimulating the energy, but it's like we're even getting to the physical through the energetic patterns. So this is sort of like working those out. I always think of them as being, these specific exercises are sort of like the weightlifting of the, for the chakras, taking the chakras to the gym, basically.
Okay.
So that's a good way to think about it in the beginning.
And so it's obvious when we go to the gym, we work out, we get bigger muscles, or we become more flexible depending on the exercises we're doing. But with the chakras, like, what does that mean? Like, what are the consequences of doing these exercises to build them up or to make them stronger or more flexible? What effect does it have, and how are we going to experience that, or what benefit are we going to get from that?
Sure. I mean,
it's not like a beach body, or whatever.
It's sort of like, I think of the Kinjas and working with them as the beach body of energy work, right? It's the building up of those foundational practices and the foundation of your energy in order to bring more balance and harmony to all the other work that you do, right? So it's like, think about it this way: when you're younger. And as a child, right, you have the same apparatus that everybody else does, but it's just a smaller in stature, right? So it's like it might be really hard for me when I'm young to lift a gallon of milk. But after I've been to the gym or after I get bigger and my muscles get bigger and all of that, it's no longer a problem, right? We just do it and we don't think anything of it. And the same thing with the chakras. It's like the more that I give them specific workouts, the more they expand and harmonize with all the others, right? Because there can be some imbalances that happen just naturally in life, right? Certain ones are going to be stronger for us if we utilize them more, and others will be more latent, right? That they're functioning, but on a minimal level, let's say. I mean, you can't not have them. You can't have them completely shut down, or you wouldn't function in certain areas, and that's not usually the case, right? So they're always, working. It's just that they may be working in a less efficient manner than they normally would be. And so this is just stimulating them in a way to help tone them and give them more muscle, basically. So that's the idea. And the end result is, again, each of those areas should become that they control. Each area that you're working, that chakra gets stronger and more flexible, and we'll see the end result by the areas that that energy controls in your life will become more harmonious. So you're going to be able to interact with that and utilize them in a much better way. So the end result is always, for us as a pragmatic person, is to try to do things energetically that will have a direct impact on our physical existence here. That's the bottom line. Like all of these things that we've been teaching people, and at the end of the day, right? It's like they really should have an idea of, how is this going to affect me in a positive way here and now, right? We can have lots of cool phenomena and those types of things, but is there a way to translate that into something that's practical? It's like, a cool phenomena would be going on a roller coaster, but does it have a practical application in life? Well, I guess if you think about it philosophically, it probably could, but I'm thinking more pragmatic, like every day. How does this affect you in a positive way every day in building these things, these chakras or energy centers?
So like as a practitioner, those are the kinds of results that you'd be like looking at. Like if you're, let's say, like you're kind of making notes in your journal, or the things that you notice throughout the day, like say you're going through the routines of doing these kinjas and you're focusing on one that's for the a specific chakra, then you might be looking for like, oh, okay, like how is that aspect of my energy feeling throughout the day, or how's that aspect of my life working or not working, or am I noticing an improvement in the harmony in that area, or a sensitivity in my perception of that type of energy or that type of interaction with a person, or
Right. So sometimes it's almost an automatic thing, like those things that are just seem to go smoother now. If we don't look at the correspondences that go with each chakra, then what the territory that they're involved in, right? From, again, a pragmatic standpoint, then it may get better and you may not know it. I mean, the end result is that it's getting better. But for us as practitioners, we want to really sort of isolate it and say, okay, these are the specific territories that this is going to.
Right.
So, what's my gauge that I'm using to see, like in my daily existence, let's say in a week's worth of time, how many times, is this involved in my daily activity, right? So how many times is my interaction with somebody, like, do I have more positive interactions with people, more negative interactions with people? Is there a certain territory that I'm always sort of stumbling in, and is that correcting it to some degree? It's like the idea is that, yes, it should be. So even if it's bringing your mind to bear on that in a more conscious way, well, that's still a good end result, right? So it doesn't really matter how the mechanism routes it to get to that end result. It's more that you're getting to that end result, and it gets more efficient over time. So
Right, but it's definitely something to take note of. And we'll
Mm,
be giving people correspondences for each one of the kinjas and the chakra that it corresponds to.
right.
So they'll have a sense of like what the kind of things to be looking for, what
Sure.
territory of their
Yep.
life and experience they should be might be taking note of while they're focusing on each one of them as they're practicing them and so on.
Right. And always, for me, it's always about, well, the way I learned them too is go from the most pragmatic part to the more, yeah, the more philosophical or more nebulous, energetic parts, right? They're still
Hmm.
important, obviously, and they always get worked on. But for me, again, it's a it's a hell of a lot easier to to focus on those things when your life is going more smoothly in your daily existence.
To focus on the spiritual or energetic or whatever when you're,
Sure,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's hard to be spiritual when you're hungry,
Right, right, right,
and
right.
that's a Buddhism quote, right?
Sure.
So that's the idea. So it's like, again, even back then, even the highest sages or whatever knew that, to build your physical life in a good way, whatever that is for you, is really paramount. When you're doing these other practices, it lets your mind be at ease when you're focusing on these other things. You're not constantly thinking, how am I going to pay my rent? How am I going to do this? How am I going to get here? You know,
So basically, you're saying that even though that we're using these kinjas, these exercises, as a means of working toward enhancing our ability to see energy,
hmm
we should also be taking note of the kind of improvements that we experience in our daily lives and in our physical world and in ourselves that are kind of benefiting us on a practical level as well.
I think
Just to
it's
make ourselves as functional and effective practitioners as we can while we're training ourselves. This is really like training
It is a
exercises.
training exercise, and but it's really important in your training exercise. I mean, we see, like, again, if we're going to use the analogy of the gym, when we do certain exercises, we see certain muscle growth in certain areas, right? So a lot of times with bodybuilders or people like that are really trying to perfect their physical form, they know certain exercises will build this, and they're always looking back in the mirror. It's not just a vanity thing. They're literally checking out, is this proportion more than that proportion? Is it balanced? Is it harmonious with what I want as my ideal form? And so they know which exercises, let's say, to even within the muscle group of the arm, right? It's like a bicep, tricep, all of these other smaller muscles, right? Which exercises will hit them to sort of bring them into proportional relevance with the rest of it, right? So, and the same thing for us. I mean, we have to have, I feel we have to have some kind of practical benefit from that. I mean, it can be, the phenomena of the experience can be good. You can have these other things, let's say more small enlightenments, or like aha moments of like, oh, this is how this connects, and this is what it is in my regular existence, or this is what it is during my energetic practices. But, how does it correlate on a day-to-day basis? What's the real, what's the, brass tacks of how that's helping me in everyday life? Because, all of this stuff, I'm not going to say it's worthless. I mean, it's obviously, it has value, but again, it's like, let's start from the earth. We're basically, every time we do introduce one of these things, every time we even introduce the concept of, like in this case, seeing auras, right? It's like, besides the cool factor, what's the practical benefit of that? How does it going to affect me in everyday life? So we're always sort of coming back to that so that we can, uh, you know, we can engage the mind in a way that makes it have, higher value in that hierarchy of values, right? So we're going to use that to help promote our life in a better way.
Know your purpose.
Know your purpose. What do you want? Why do you want it? And
Hmm.
then what are the metrics or the measuring stick? What's the measuring stick that we use to sort of gauge that? I mean, I think, yeah, there are energetic ones, but they can be a little nebulous, so sometimes, sometimes
Hmm.
not. But
Well, I think that we all want to feel better,
yeah,
in our daily life and our daily interactions and in different aspects of our lives, right? But even just building up these energy centers, making them spin faster, making them more functional, doesn't that just promote a smoother existence or a better feeling in your daily life of
right.
how you are, who
More
you are,
harmonious interactions with your world.
right? Right.
Yeah.
And you were also talking about when these energy centers begin to spin faster and they become maybe more robust or more, strong in their sending and receiving of energy. They're also enhancing our awareness, right? They're going
Right.
to make us more sensitive and
Correct.
more perceptive.
Hmm.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well. Like,
I mean, beyond what you just said,
yeah,
it's a little bit it gets a little bit more complex, right? So, but in some ways, not really either. I mean, the idea is that each of those, if we think about them like a lens or an operating system, there are lots of these bridges, right, between one aspect of something and another. It's sort of like a resistance or a resistor in, again, an electrical system, right? So it's like sometimes the energy is too high on this end of the cable, right? And so we need something that is a resistance piece that, it goes through and sort of rends that signal down to a smaller degree so that we don't blow out the very sensitive machine on the other side, right? So, but sometimes it's just the direct flow, and sometimes you need even more energy to go through to, stimulate something. Hence, breakers in your house, and different ways of, you can't just plug your hair dryer into the line outside that's hanging in the telephone poles, right? It'd just be too much. It would blow it out, right? So you need all of these sort of sequences to sort of rend it down to a form that you can utilize for each of your pieces of equipment. And the same thing happens with these. The more we stimulate them, the more that we make them grow. Yes, we grow in sensitivity, but they also harmonize with the others, the other chakras, right? The other energy centers, makes this harmony within us. And we're able to, again, the idea is always to, how can I interact more smoothly with my environment, to bring me what I want. If we can, let's say the more smoothly we can, work in our environment, the better off we are physically. I mean, look at the difference between somebody who's playing, some kind of sport in high school and then a professional level. I mean, again, same basic configuration of human being, right? Maybe younger, maybe older, but, the muscle structure and the coordination and all of those things that they've worked on so intensely for so many years, the 10,000 hour type of deal, puts them in a place where everything sort of, when things happen, everything moves almost automatically, right? They know where to run, they know where to jump, they know where to, grab the ball or do whatever they do in that sport, right? So it's a much smoother coordination between all of those things, and also keeping everything else in mind, right? So a kid in high school might be able to do those things. It might look a little bit more awkward or whatever, but one of the things that might be different is that he doesn't really keep his eye on the whole field or whatever. He doesn't really see all of the different things that are going on. He doesn't have a bird's eye view of what's happening, right? And that's a trademark of a professional, is that they're not just doing their functions within a certain territory, but they're also able to keep a certain aspect of themselves engaged in the overall view of what's happening, so they know what to do next.
Mm-hmm. And so you think of that as being a very high level practitioner as well, because
Absolutely.
as you're doing these things to promote certain types of energetic experiences or interactions or whatever, you think of those as being like more intense sources of energy or perception that are coming into your field. And so you're saying that as your chakras are more in balance and stronger and more able to handle that flow of energy, you're gonna function a lot better through those experiences and stay in better balance and in more clear awareness and integrate those things into your life better and be able to apply them and all that.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. So, yeah, the analogy is sound, and I would say that with almost any professional, thing that I can think of where people have to do a specific thing, but they're also keeping the broad spectrum of their experience intact at the same time and
Right.
really engaged with it. There's a decent percentage of their mind that's still engaged in the whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how their piece is moving through
Right.
that whole at the time is important.
You could liken it to playing scales on a musical instrument, right?
Right.
And just practicing that for hours and hours. That's the Kinjas.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And shifting gears, shifting keys, doing all of those things within that very smoothly, right? So that when they're playing with other people, then they know how to weave that in and out, right?
Right.
I mean,
Or they're playing a very complex piece of music. They're doing a ritual, or they're working with a client, or something, and assessing their energy in that way. It's like that's where yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. But they're also keeping, they also have their mind. A part of their mind is in the overview of how this is affecting everything else in the person's life, right? So, what are all the small streams of information that are coming in? One of the parts of building the chakras stronger and more flexible and or is basically that as the information comes in, we're getting a more accurate read on, our perceptions are coming in a much more clear way, so that we can more accurately decide what to do next, or how what we just did had an effect on the overall program, whatever that is.
Right.
So, yeah, that's it.
Cool. All right. Awesome. I thought I had another question about that, but we'll flesh it out.
Yeah, it'll come up.
Cool. We'll get on to the next part, which will be just a little bit of guidelines for the routines themselves.
Perfect.
And we'll get into it.
Great.
All right.